Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Indian Nation Station pregame show right here on the Indian Nation Station. I'm your host, AJ Ganger. With me, as always, is Brian Gillespie and my daughter, Lainey, here today. She's a special guest on our show. She's not having fun, so we had to put her on camera. It is senior night here tonight, Brian, as well as the Battle of the Battered Helmet as the Sidney Yellow Jackets come into town. It's hard to believe we are already in week 9.
Like a blink of the eye, it's done. You know, we're at week 9. Everything's on the line this week. Senior night, playoff positioning. If there is a playoff spot, they need to get this one tonight. It's huge.
Yeah, these next 2 games are going to be key in seeing if Piqua can or cannot get into the playoffs as we play Sidney here tonight. And next week we will be at Fairborn playing at their new stadium there. Don't forget, all of our games are tape delayed on the Indian Nation Station and on YouTube. We're only covering home games and any playoff games that we are actually able to attend. Some places they will lock you out of those press boxes. We're going to thank our 24-25 sponsors: Lemon Meringue Floral Boutique, Bits and Pieces, This and That's Candy on Main, Dick Lumpkins, Edison State Community College, Robert Brothers Comfort, Dr. Littlejohn, Little Caesars, Wings and Rings, Atlanta Sportswear, Crayex, Kathy, Henny, and Harmony Systems. Thank you for all your support throughout the 24-25 school year. Brian, we had a couple really good games last week in the NVL. We had Troy 42, Stebbins 35. We also had Butler 46, Sidney 43. So 2 really close games. We obviously beat Stebbins pretty bad. And we're within a touchdown, really, of Troy, if you really look at it. Butler, we were within 10 points. I mean, this is a really tough league when it gets down to it.
Well, that's what I've been saying all year. Last year, the league was down, and Piqua was way down, and Piqua played down, and they played games close, but against competition that may not have been at a high quality. This year, they've played better, but the results haven't been any better. In fact, if you look at They've been close, but then the end of the day, they're farther behind than you would expect. But with those games, Butler, Sidney especially, Sidney had a huge lead there, couldn't hold it. That was a heartbreaker. 46-43, last second field goal. Man, what a crusher! That one would have put Sidney in prime position in the playoffs. Now they're sitting at that 14 spot, and they're really on the brink. There's no guarantees that they get in now, and they've got to win this one tonight.
Yeah, and Fairborn beating Greenville 27-0 as well. Tip City 63-6 over West Carrollton. Oof. And then Xenia with the 30-8 victory over our Piqua Indians last week. As we move into our stats, Cade Thomas actually threw the ball 28 times for 18 completions, 134 yards and a touchdown. Jericho Burns, 18 carries for 70 yards. Rayshawn Garrett, 6 catches, 66 yards and a touchdown. Izzy Coleman on defense, 14 total tackles. And, the biggest stat that I take away from this game, looking at it, time of possession. Xenia, 47 minutes, 58 seconds. Piqua, 12 minutes, 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, Xenia just runs the ball. They're so good. Yeah. And their receivers are good, too. I mean, that was a team that was, and they're one of those few teams that can balance offense and defense. Yeah. Where they play as well on offense as they play on defense. Their quarterback just broke a record for the state completions in a row record with 29 in over 2 games.
Wow.
So Xenia, if you're looking at it on that Xenia tip game the last week of the season, is lining up to be a gigantic game, because Xenia wins that one, they probably get the number 1 seed in this region, Region 8. And if Tip wins, they'll stay number 1 seed in their region, Region 12. So those are 2 really good teams who probably have aspirations to be there at the end, at least in the Final Four of state, if they can put it all together.
Yeah, it seemed like Piqua, we hung around quite a bit in this game. It was 16-0, I believe, all the way up until we were about in the 4th quarter, and then it was 16-8, and then Xenia just kind of wore us down.
Well, that second half, they just kind of took over. But, I mean, it was 9-0 with our ball 4th down in their territory. So I mean, we've done a lot of the hanging around stuff this year.
Yeah,
the issue has been closing the deal, and we just haven't been quite good enough to close the deal against the good teams. This week is an opportunity to get a win that really counts, and that will lock us into a playoff position.
You definitely 100%. Is there anything else from the Xenia game that you would like to go over? I mean, Xenia had 8 penalties for 81 yards. There were no turnovers in this game, which was a pretty clean game as far as that.
Yeah. Not much. I mean, you just look at a team that's just probably one of the most talented in the Southwest District.
Yeah.
And they were just too much at the end of the day. Were too much for Piqua to handle. You don't really want to see them come playoff time, though. You do have some familiarity there, but they're just a very good team that can do things great on offense and defense.
As we move on here, we're going to take a look at the Division II Region 8 rankings. We're going all the way down until we get to Piqua. Number 1, Anderson. 2, Xenia. 3, Harrison. 4, Kings. 5, Mount Healthy. 6, LaSalle. 7, Baden. 8, Butler. 9, Lima Senior, who's actually undefeated right now. Aiken is 10, Withrow 11, Monroe 12, Troy 13, Sidney 14, Stebbins 15, and Loveland 16. Those are the 16 teams that would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. And at 17 is Trotwood and 18 is Piqua. Brian, what are your thoughts on these rankings?
Well, as I looked at the rankings, I looked at Piqua and down towards the bottom. Trotwood's going to get in. They've got 2 more games. They're going to win both those games. They're
I think so
playing
too.
City League competition. They're 17 now, probably going to move in. Stebbins may fall out or may finish 16. Loveland has 2 really difficult games. Stebbins has 2 really difficult games. Sidney, depending on what happens in this game, will either be in or be fighting for that 16 spot. Yeah. Troy's in. I don't see them losing either one of their last 2 games. They've played the hardest parts of their schedule. Troy does play Sidney. Mm-hmm. I don't think Sidney can beat Troy, but from my perspective, that's kind of where we're at. Withrow's on the come up. They're doing better. Monroe's a good, solid team. Lima Senior is a victim of their schedule.
Yeah, they are.
They haven't. They play a Piqua, who on paper maybe has a solid team, but no, they haven't beat a team with a winning record.
No.
So, and they're 8-0. So they're not going to get. They were up 72 to nothing at halftime last week. And
how is that possible? Scored 70 points in the first half.
I don't know how that works.
They had to score in probably every single play when they had the ball.
They shut it down. They didn't score any in the second half because of the running clock. They probably put their JV kids in.
I think they put their freshmen.
But I mean,
at that point.
That type of win doesn't really help you. It's much like beating a West Carrollton or something like that. You just don't get any points out of that. No. So they're going to be a victim of their own success. But I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to play them because they're good. Yeah. Just because their schedule's not good doesn't mean they're not good. If they play Butler, Butler's kind of been on the down. They haven't been playing as well lately. That could be a Lima Senior win there if it ended up the way it is. But we know these rankings can make some changes over the last 2 weeks. Yeah. But I think the top 8 or 9 are kind of set.
Yeah, I was going to say the same
thing. The bottom is a little bit loosey-goosey. I mean, at Piqua,
I think 14, 15, and 16 are where you're going to see some movement. If anything, it's going to be those bottom 3 seeds.
Yeah, I don't know. My thing is how many points do you get for beating a Fairborn? Because if you look at their schedule, they've won 3 games, but their 3 wins are over winless teams. Yes. So it's like, I don't know, the magic that is these rankings. I don't know how much value a win over Fairborn is. That's why you just got to take care of business against Sidney. Yeah. And then you don't have to worry about the last week of the season and trying to edge your way in. First of all, if you do get in, you're either playing Anderson or Xenia.
So who would you rather play at this point? Probably Xenia again.
Probably Xenia just because you're familiar with them, but Xenia is really good. Yeah. So you can't, it's not a huge, hey, I win, I play this team or that team. The difference is Anderson's had past success in the playoffs. Xenia has not. Yep. So you'd probably rather have Xenia because they don't have that confidence to go, belief.
There really hasn't been a lot of NBL teams with playoff success besides Piqua, honestly, in the last few years.
Well, Tip had some. Tip and Piqua. But Xenia's not a team that you say, oh, well, that's going to, that team's just going to roll in and play their best football. that with history, some say that may not happen. So maybe you have your best shot against Xenia, but you'd rather win this week, and then you can maybe play the 3 seed or maybe play the 4 seed if you got lucky in the playoffs. If you don't, now you're just, if you beat Fairborn, you gotta leave your destiny at other people's behest. So
pretty much everyone controls their own destiny. If you really look at the Joe Itel rankings, like I said, I think the top 8 are pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
As we move on here to our Week 9 NVL games, we've got West Carrollton going to Butler, Xenia goes to Greenville, Stebbins is at Tip, Fairborn's at Troy, and Sidney is here. This is a pretty lackluster week of NVL football besides the Piqua-Sidney game.
Yeah, really. I mean, everybody else is, it's a pretty clear winners there. I mean, Greenville's shut her down for the year. I mean, they're struggling to even score.
Yeah.
West Carrollton is not very good, and they're struggling to score. Stebbins, Tip, maybe Stebbins scores a little bit, but they're still going to give up a lot.
Yeah.
So Fairborn, Troy, Fairborn a little bit, but not really. Gets at Troy. That's going to be pretty easy. Sidney, Piqua, to me, is a coin flip.
It is. It really is. And this is going to be one of those rivalry games that I think it's probably going to come down to the wire.
Well, what's interesting to me is how Sidney is all offense and Piqua's primarily defense.
Yeah.
So, Piqua can play a little offense, but can they take advantage of Sidney's porous defense? I mean, if you look at the rankings for Sidney, they're giving up 378 yards per game. They're eighth out of 10 in rushing yards. They're giving up 216. So maybe Piqua can run the ball some on them. They're giving up 161.4 through the air. So if Piqua can play offense and be successful, they're going to need to be, because yards per game, number 1 in the NVL for Sidney for offense, 3rd in rushing, they're at 214. And passing, they're throwing for 198 yards a game. So Sidney presents a major challenge for that Piqua defense. It's really a contrast of styles and offense-defense here. It's going to be pretty interesting tonight.
It'll be definitely interesting. As last year, Sidney ended up beating Piqua 21-17. That game was at Sidney. It's a rarity when Piqua loses the battered helmet, and last year they lost it.
Yeah, the battered helmet, since... this is the 129th meeting.
I was trying to figure out what meeting this was.
I did the pregame, the preview. It's just the 7th win over Piqua since '85 for Sidney.
They've only won 7 times since 1985.
Correct. The Jackets have not won back-to-back games in this series since 1978 and 79.
Oh my gosh.
So Bill Neese is 26-6 versus Sidney. So there's definitely the mental hurdles for Sidney is probably the biggest challenge for them. They've got the talent. Can they believe in themselves enough where they're going to be able to overcome history in this battered helmet and take it home for a second time in 2 years in a row? That the odds are against it happening.
Yeah. What are some of the people we need to look out for here for the Sidney Yellow Jacket?
Well, first and foremost, their quarterback, number 5. His name's Ethan New. He's a senior. I will tell you, as I was looking over their team, they better get it done this year, because they're going to drop off. Almost every one of their top 12 players, depending on position, is a senior. They have a few juniors mixed in, but senior Ethan New, quarterback. He's thrown for 1,520 yards, which is 3rd for quarterbacks in the MVL. He has 19 touchdown passes to 4 interceptions. He's also the 6th leading rusher in the MVL.
Wow.
With 560 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. So he's combined for, you're looking at 31 touchdowns for them.
31 touchdowns and 4 interceptions.
Yeah, so he is a handful. He took over, as I was reading about last year's game, because I didn't happen to be there. He took over on that 99-yard drive, was the winner. That was his first ever chance to be a significant quarterback for them because of an injury. And so he has some positive memories against Piqua. You hope that the defense can slow him down. Running back, they have a running back named Isaiah Foster, registered 693 yards and 6 touchdowns. Julius Spratt, they've got talent. Tank Fleming, wide receiver number 1. He's been back just last week. He had 3 catches for 118 yards and a touchdown. He's got 602 yards and 6 touchdowns in 5 games played as a receiver. That is incredible numbers. So they've got the talent to score a lot of points. The question will be, can this Piqua defense slow them down? Because I don't think Sidney's going to be able to slow Piqua down.
Well, when you got to build these defense out there, anything is possible because we've seen it where Bill has given up points, and we've seen where he hasn't given up very many points. And we've also seen this year, specifically in games with Xenia, Tip City, Butler, we're very close early. We're just within a couple scores. So, I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, anything can happen. And, with this type of rivalry, that Sidney team is going to be hyped and ready to go. The Piqua team is going to be ready to go. It's a huge senior night, lots of emotions. Who can control their emotions long enough to focus enough to come out victors?
It won't only be our senior night for our football players, but it'll also be senior night for our athletic trainers, our band members, as well as our cheerleaders. So come on out early for all the senior night festivities. We will be streaming that on delay as well along with our game. Brian, anything else you would like to add before we get out of here?
No, I just appreciate the extra guest host.
And she's been pretty easy.
Done a great job. She actually smiled at me, so that was nice. We've had a good season, another great season of pregame shows.
Yeah, it's been great. Again, thanks everybody for watching all season long here on the Indian Nation Station pregame show. Stay tuned for the game coming up next. We're going to have Tom Michaels, Brian Gillespie, and Jeff Dillon jumping in a little bit for our coverage. Thank you again, Brian. It's been awesome having you back for another year. Hopefully you come back again next year. For Brian Gillespie, I'm AJ Ganger saying good night, go Piqua, beat Sidney.